Okay, good morning. Today we are doing CO26. I can identify, write, and find equivalent ratios. So, let's look at what that means. We've already discussed how to write ratios and how to simplify them, right? You divide out of all the numbers the same number, just like simplifying fractions. Remember that ratios are simplified similar as to how fractions are simplified. The same can be said for finding equivalent ratios. We've worked on finding equivalent fractions. Now we're going to be finding equivalent ratios. So for each ratio below, we're going to write two equivalent ratios. So let's see what that means. What do you think I should do? 4 to 5. How could I find equivalent ratios? Bridget? Times them both by 2. Just like when we did equivalent fractions, we multiplied the top and the bottom by the same number. We're doing the same thing with ratios. We're multiplying all of the numbers by the same number. So that would be 8 to 10. Is that the only equivalent ratio we could have, Emma? We can multiply them both by 10. You can choose which numbers. 4 times 10 is 40. 5 times 10 is 50. You get to choose what you multiply by. Just like with the equivalent fractions, you got to choose. Now, the key thing to pay attention to that got a lot of us when we did equivalent fractions on the test that said write 2. I had a lot of friends that only gave me 1, so I couldn't give you credit for it. Same thing with equivalent ratios. If the directions say write 2, guess what, friends? You need to write 2. And you're going to put it in the same format that they gave. So if they're giving colons, you're going to put your answer with colons. If they're using the word 2, you're going to put your answer with the word 2. If it's fractions, you're going to do fractions. Okay? So however they put the first ratio, put your ratio to follow so it would be similar. Does that make sense? So just like with equivalent fractions, multiply the two numbers by the same number. You get your equivalent ratio. Do we have to simplify equivalent ratios? No. Just like with fractions, when I say simplify, 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 with ratios, we always have to simplify like we did on yesterday's objective, except for the equivalent. If we simplify it, we're going to come down to the same ratio. So we don't simplify equivalent ratios, just like we don't simplify equivalent fractions. Our next section that we're doing, we have a bunch of ratios in the circle. So we've got a lot of ratios in the circle. For each given ratio over here, we need to list each ratio from the circle that is equivalent to it. So if I have 3 to 1, I'm going to look at all these ratios in my circle and see which ones are 3 to 1. If I simplify. So if I simplify the ratios in the circle, what ones give me 3 to 1? Who can find one in the circle that I can put in there? Lexi?
18 to 6.
18 to 6. If I multiply that 3 by 6, I get 18. If I multiply 1 by 6, I get 6. So 18 to 6 works. I'm not going to cross it all the way up because we might repeat some ratios. Is there another one, Maddie? 9 to 3. If I multiply 3 by 3, I get 9. If I multiply 1 by 3, I get 3. Are there any other ones? There's actually not. No other one is that 3-to-1 ratio. There might be some that are a 1-to-3 ratio, but it has to be 3-to-1. Let's look at our 18-to-15. Can we find a ratio that would be 18-to-15? James?
6 and 5.
6 and 5. Oh, goodness. So that's 6-to-5. If I divide 18 by 3, I get 6. If I divide 15 by 3, I get 5. Is there another one that would work? What do you think, Bridget? So Bridget's thinking 9-to-3. If I divide 18 by 2, I get 9. If I divide 15 by 2, do I get 3? Nope. There's actually one more. If I multiply that 6 to 5, I can multiply that up. So I simplified 18 to 15, simplified it down to 6 to 5. Looking at that 6 to 5, can I multiply that up, Lila? 12 to 10. 6 times 2 is 12. 5 times 2 is 10. Looking at that 18 to 15, I might not have caught that one. Looking at the simplified 6 to 5, I can catch that one. So sometimes you have to look at the simplified version to see if you can multiply it up to any other one. You're going to do the rest of these on your own. Then we have some word problems. The ratio of girls to boys in the class is 3-to-2. There are 15 girls. How many boys are in the class? And how many total students are in the class? There are 2 questions, so you need 2 answers. How many boys? How many total students? Same thing down here. How many dogs are in the pet store? And how many total cats and dogs are in the pet store? Any questions on how we're doing this objective? Adeline.
So for the circle one, do you only need to do one? Do you have to do all of the ones?
Just like we listed all the ones that worked, you have to list all the ones that work. It says list each ratio from the circle that's equivalent to it. So you have to find all the equivalent ratios. You can't just list one. Make sure you're finding them all. Any other questions? All right, if you are watching this at home, remember, once you're done with your objective, work on that Khan Academy that's due on Thursday. Work on your Math Packet 4 that's due next week, Friday. I hope you are well, and I hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful day.